All right, here we go, everyone. Another awesome episode of the All Around Adventure podcast. And I'm excited to welcome Bob and Elliot, who are the hosts of the Traveler's Blueprint podcast. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time for joining me and welcome to the All Around Adventure podcast.
Thank you.
Looking forward to conversation.
Yeah, likewise, fellas. We're kind of flipping the script a little bit. I had the privilege to be a guest on your guys' show, The Traveler's Blueprint. This was back in around like November time when I was in the midst of hiking across the entire state of Michigan. So
yes,
it was a great conversation. Ellie, do you remember what number? I know you are oddly capable of holding the numbers of some of our podcasts in your head. Do you remember?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can find it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it'll certainly find its way into the show notes for this episode as well, in case anyone wants like a little bit of a prelude to this conversation that they're about to listen to. But wait till you're done with this show first, and then go back. Yeah. So we'll certainly do that. And I'm, as you guys can tell, it's a little bit different. I've actually have a clean haircut and a clean shaven face this time because I had this thing that I was going to do where I asked my audience. This is probably going to be the last time I ask my audience for anything. I'm like, should I shave my face as I go, or should I just let my facial hair grow throughout the trek? And of course, unanimously, it was pretty much just let your facial hair grow.
Yeah, I like it. I would have voted for that.
That's what I would have voted for too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that might be the last time I ask my guests for anything, because it's like, I can't grow facial hair very well. Like it's like patchy, and it's like, it just doesn't look great, but it was, I guess, kind of fun. I guess I'll say so. All right. Well, kicking things off here, you guys have been traveling for quite some time now, but of course, every great story has a beginning. So I want to go there with you two as well. So just starting off this episode, what actually inspired you both to become travelers in the first place? And just to kind of keep things a little bit organized, Bob, how about we start with you first?
Sure. So I actually don't have really early travel experiences. A lot of my my interest spurred from the TV shows I was watching, specifically like Animal Planet and Steve Irwin. Mm-hmm. I was a big Steve Irwin fan as a young kid, and we're talking about. So I was born in 1987. So through the 90s, Animal Planet was huge for me. Discovery Channel was huge for me, and the History Channel were huge for me. And they were different back then than they are today.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was really about travel. There were good survival shows. There was a lot of great shows about animals and cultures and people, and so that piqued my interest, and that sort of evolved into I just kept on watching shows exactly like that. And then one day I realized, and I don't remember when, but I realized that there are other people in the world who don't do things like I do. Mm-hmm. And that kind of blew my mind. I didn't know, as a young kid, you just thought this was the way it was for everybody. And then you realize that there are other countries with other environments and other cultures and other food, and that was fascinating to me. And so that was sort of like the first step into starting to learn about cultures, which essentially evolved into, travel.
Yeah, I do recall. Yeah, those early like mid 90s, like late 90s Discovery Channel, History Channel, and just like the type of shows and just content that they were sharing. It's just you flip to one of those channels, and normally you're getting like a close up look of like some exotic animal way out in the middle of nowhere, and that's what it was like. And then now you kind of got like these series shows, which I'll say a lot of them are pretty good even up to this day, but it certainly was different back then. I certainly do recall.
Yeah.
So.
Did you ever get into Zaboomafoo?
Zaboomafoo?
No,
what is Zaboomafoo?
Yeah, it was like Saturday mornings. It was like the Krat Bros or something, and they had this. Their mascot was a lemur, like a Madagascar lemur, and they had them animated, and then they actually had a real life one, and it was all about animals, and it was kind of like Steve Irwin-y.
Interesting. No,
gotcha.
No, I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it was classic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. What about you, Elliot? What got you going?
It was hard to pinpoint, but I ended up taking a lot of trips as a kid because my mom's side of the family is kind of spread out all over the U.S. So I had family in like California, in Colorado, Florida, and Washington, Alaska. So we would take these trips almost every year. And even on my mom's side for Christmas, we would do destination Christmas every other year in one of those locations. So we were traveling ever since I was like a 1-year-old. And it was always really nice. And then I think the first trip that I really remember enjoying, not just the trip itself, but like the side excursions. So going to like Yellowstone National Park or Yosemite. And then my dad, for work in the summers, would travel every once in a while, and we would go up as a family to Canada and go to like Montreal or Halifax. And that was a great time. So it kind of rubbed off. And then eventually when I made my way into college, I ended up taking a 1 week service learning trip to Costa Rica. And that was kind of the gateway to everything else that followed it. And ever since then, I'd been really interested in going to a place and really diving in to get I don't want to say local experience, but getting in deeper than just seeing the surface.
Right. And how old were you at the time when you made this trip to Costa Rica?
I think I had just turned 21.
And was this the first country that you visited outside of the U.S.?
Yes. I mean, I don't really count Canada since it's like a sister country, but yeah, that was the first one that was really outside.
Yeah, it's the same thing with me in Canada. Since I'm from Michigan originally, it's like Canada's probably like an hour drive from my childhood home. So yeah, I don't know if I'd really count that as my first international travel experience. But, so for me, my first country was to Japan, again, if we minus Canada. And for me, that was the one that started it all. It's just, and you kind of know, you fellas know how it is. Once you go abroad and you experience a different culture other than your own and all these other, new experiences, it just kind of plants that seed that you just want to kind of cultivate and just go out and find more and more. So it was Japan for me, Costa Rica for you, Elliot. What about you, Bob? Where was your first international country?
First international was Thailand.
Wow.
Thailand, yeah. We had a layover in Abu Dhabi. So technically it was United Arab Emirates for maybe 30 hours or something. And then Thailand.
Okay. So there's quite some contrast between the both. Well, not only culturally speaking, but also if you're talking like desert and then jungle. Yeah. So when you both kind of started going out and seeing like all these different countries, and kind of like one of the first things I want to talk about that, many people would seek out when they go to, foreign countries would be, cultural experiences and getting the chance to experience different cultures and also maybe integrate as best they possibly can, maybe try to learn a little bit of local language. So what was it kind of like going to these places? And of course, Elliot, you brought up the point saying that, you were pretty young at the time, 21 years old. Would you say that culture shock for both of you, was it ever an issue, or did you kind of just hit the ground running when you went to some of these places? Fill us in on that.
So with Costa Rica, I don't know if there was necessarily culture shock associated with that, since it was a Spanish speaking country in high school and all through elementary school. Our school kind of promoted second language learning. So I had taken Spanish for about 8 or 9 years at that point, and I had taken a course in college. So I wouldn't say I was super familiar with the culture, but it wasn't shocking. And then we were actually on a farm for that entire week. So it was almost more shocking to be on the farm and learning that way of life than the actual culture of Costa Rica. And I guess farming is kind of a subculture of Costa Rica.
Gotcha. Okay. What about you, Bob?
Yeah, I definitely had some culture shock. Now I don't know. I'm not even sure how that is defined. Like it wasn't negative, right? Like shock, you kind of feel like it was a negative experience.
Yeah.
It was culture shock, but in a really positive way. It was overwhelming at times. Like, and you get that dopamine hit when you're sort of in a new country and like you're experiencing all these new things.
Right.
Yeah. Abu Dhabi. You step off the plane, and this is my first international experience, and we look different from, our skin tone to the things that we're wearing. We stick out, right?
Right.
Like, there's no hiding who we are in this country. So people are looking at us, and just going through that city, it was a major shock. Everything from the way the buildings were constructed to the way traffic flowed to the food to the atmosphere on the street was completely different than, definitely different than the suburbs I live in New Jersey, but even Philadelphia, the closest city to me and where I was born, extremely different. So Yeah, it was, but again, it was fun. It was this rush of like brand new. Everything was brand new. And so the experiences were just coming at you so fast, and it was awesome. And it hooked me. It hooked me immediately. And then again, we went to Thailand, which had a brand new type of culture shock, even more different than than home, because at least Abu Dhabi is a modern city, and so you can relate to some things in a city. Like there's just universal truths to cities. When we went to like Phuket and then went to some of the islands that didn't even have running fresh water, it's pretty, shocking.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting how you bring up the point saying that, depending on where you go, you could potentially stand out quite a bit. And of course, with you going to the Middle East, you're going to probably stand out a little bit. Same thing when going to Thailand. And, obviously we may be able to blend in a little bit more in some European countries, but I definitely stood out quite a bit myself when I was in Japan. And but at the same time, though, it was kind of fun because I remember when I was in Hiroshima, I went to Miyajima Island, and you take a ferry boat to get over there, of course. And there was all these Japanese elementary school students, and they were on a field trip. And their task for helping them with their English language learning was to go talk to who they believe might be native English speakers. So, and of course, I'm on a faculty-led study abroad while I was in college. And so these students are coming up to all of us, and they kind of have their scripts that they would read, and then they have to practice all of their lines in English to me and everyone else that they assume were native English speakers. And then they had to get 5 signatures saying that they've done this 5 times with 5 different people. So, but I thought that was just kind of fun, just doing that with those kids, and then also just really just the overall respect, and I'll just say the discipline too, that I experienced from people in Japan is just, they seem to go throughout their lives with so much purpose each day. And I thought that was just pretty amazing. And, so those were some things that I took back with me, just, being around a different culture like this. So right on.
I think the Japanese tourists actually have the highest rating when they travel in terms of when they visit another country. They're the most appreciative, respectful, and courteous of the country that they're visiting.
Yeah. I think that it's a direct, it directly translates from how they are in their own country too. They really have an awesome culture in that regard. It's so community driven.
Yeah. And I definitely noticed that too with, some of the places that we went to go eat at as well, because, again, they're being on a class trip, and I would go out to dinner with some of my classmates that I'm traveling with. And, a lot of the dishes that we would get at restaurants, they wouldn't be just big meals, on a big plate just for one person. Typically they would be more appetizer type style stuff that you can share with others. And the idea was to get a group of people together to order these things and, to share amongst each other. And then I also just noticed is that just their meals in general were, taken pretty seriously. It's you don't worry about work. You don't worry about anything else. You stay present with the people that you're with. So that's kind of what I want to transition to next. And, and I'm sure talking about cultural highlights will come into the play a little bit as we talk about this, but I want to talk about culinary experiences yet, because I think a good way to really kind of integrate and appreciate, another destination that you're going to is to try some of the local fares and the local foods. So let's talk about food next. even though I just had lunch, I'll probably want to go and eat again after this conversation. But what's been some of your main cultural highlights from, and this could just be from, pretty much anywhere, I guess. And this may be a loaded question too, because again, so much variety out there, but what kind of comes to mind right away, fellas?
Oh, what doesn't? So I think there's a few trips that really pop into my mind. The first one, Costa Rica, there was a lot of rice and beans and eggs, which I love. It was almost every single meal. But then every single meal also had fresh juice with everything. And it was they just pick the fruit and they make it into a juice that morning. And that was pretty awesome. I did not get tired of that the entire week. But following up on that, Peru was actually an incredible culinary hotspot, especially Lima. Lima has such a diverse food scene, and we actually talked to someone on our podcast who does like food tours within Lima, and there's just such a fusion between Asian influence, South American influence, Spanish influence, American influence, and it's got, you know, the sea, the mountains, the plains, everything is there, and they have access to so many different ingredients at their fingertips. It was just a really intriguing and versatile food scene. And then we also had guinea pig.
Yeah, we had guinea pig. So I can actually add on to that. We did that one together. And Elliot, that was on my list, was one of the things I noted was Peru. So that when we were in Peru, the food was amazing because they were developing this food industry in Lima, and the seafood was incredibly fresh. But then, it was the ingredients, right? So because they have these different elevations, they have all these different microclimates, and they're able to grow. They have like 4,000 different types of potatoes.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, just
no way.
Yeah, so they have a variety of 4,000
The Irish
potatoes.
are so envious.
Yeah. and so you can see if you I don't know if you've been to Peru.
Not yet. No. That's why I'm so intrigued right now. Yeah.
Like where Machu Picchu is, and even on the way there, and I forget some of the names of the other archaeological sites. But you can actually see the difference in elevation where they look like giant steps. Mm-hmm. And what those actually are agricultural plots at different elevations so they can get different climates and raise different crops. And so it was really interesting. We did spend a lot of time focusing on the food there because we ended up meeting, having the woman on our podcast. And so food was the big focus. And then we ate a guinea pig. We each ate a guinea pig, and a whole guinea pig. They took the guts out. Yes. And then it was deep fried on a plate, head, feet, everything attached.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. So now, was this guinea pig, do they roam wild there, or was this or someone just raising these specifically for food delicacies?
I think they're raised. They are kind of they're a bit of a tourist attraction too, but in some areas of like Cusco and the higher elevation, they actually just have them on a stick on the side of the road. Already
killed and cooked. Yeah. And like as you're driving by, they just put the stick in your window and you grab the guinea pig and you pay them and you just kind of keep on your way. It's like fast food, guinea pig style.
Wow.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I think they do them like for special occasions, maybe still, like weddings and stuff. They'll serve it, but overall, it's not part of their everyday diet. It's definitely like a touristy thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Well, this is pretty interesting, fellas, because it's just, honestly, this was not the answer that I expected from either of you, because I think, when many people might pose this question to someone, what's been some of your favorite, culinary highlights from traveling? I think a lot of people would like zoom into like Italy, where you get, pizza and pastas and, different types of wine and what have you, and things like that, or France, or, something along like those lines, mm-hmm. But it's just, it's just, I wouldn't have expected somewhere in South America to come, forth with this question, but I do like that idea, though, about, like you said, Elliot, the different elevations, the different microclimates that could yield different types of crops, which can, create a vast array of ingredients to work with for all different types of food. So, it's pretty interesting.
I think you could go to Peru with the aim to learn about the ingredients of their food, and you would get a very deep experience and understanding of their culture as a result. Like that could be the reason for travel. And you would see a ton of the country and really have a cool experience.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah. All right. Now here's a question for you guys. Have you ever traveled somewhere and had a local food that you could get here stateside, but once you've had it in country, where I guess it's kind of the specialty, if you will, did it, I guess I'd say, ruin that dish for you for the rest of your life, where you come back to the States and you get it here and it's just not the same? And for me, if I may kick this off, for me, it was getting hummus in Israel and then coming back to the States. I can't just go get regular store-bought hummus again. It's just not the same. So is there any food that's been ruined because of an amazing experience that you've had elsewhere?
Yeah, I have a few, even like just off the top of my head. Different pastas in Rome. Cacio e pepe I had in Rome. I tried to get it. I went to an Italian restaurant and no, it's not the same. Just not the same. Another one is seafood. So when I was in Croatia, we were eating a ton of seafood along the coast. Specifically, I had octopus multiple nights because it was just so good. I have yet to replicate octopus in the United States cooked to that degree. And then the other one kind of goes off of what Elliot was saying in Costa Rica with the juice. When I was in Thailand, every day we were there, we started the morning off with this fresh glass of guava juice. And my wife and I, both of us now are obsessed with guava juice. So when we see it, we try to buy it and like to get that a little bit of that back, and it doesn't. It's gone. Yeah.
What about you, Elliot?
I was trying to think of some, but I think there's a lot of great restaurants in the States that have, so I'll preface it by saying, yeah, I don't think I could get some of the stuff that I've gotten in like Paris or Peru near me right now, but I think there are areas that I have been that are just as good as some of the food that I've gotten in those countries, which is great because those people are from those countries.
Yeah,
replicating that food.
Yeah, and obviously what comes to mind right away is here. And there's certain cities out there that I kind of designate as like culinary capitals where, they're just very multicultural places where you could get like all kinds of ethnic foods from around the world. I mean, I think here stateside New York City would certainly be one of those cities. Like abroad, London would certainly be one of those cities just as well too. So I guess you can find them. You may have to look a little bit harder. But yeah, over there.
It's definitely the higher end cuisine too. Like you're not going to be able to find like the street food in New York City. It's the more higher end expensive cuisine that can be replicated for those reasons that Elliot said.
Yeah, absolutely.
No guinea pig, no fried guinea pig in the United States. Driving down the Jersey Turnpike and someone sticks a stick with a guinea pig on it on your window.
All right, now speaking of guinea pig, would you both say that like out of everything that you've eaten like throughout your travels, would guinea pig basically be the one you consider to be the most unique, or I'd say, or some people would say like, what's the craziest thing that you've ever eaten? Would that be it? Or might there be something above that? What do y'all think?
I think the guinea pig is pretty high up there.
Yeah, it's hard to top a whole guinea pig.
Yeah. When I was in Tanzania, or one of our last nights, we had like a fish fry. And it was the whole fish, and you're supposed to just kind of like pick it off the bone. And we ended up eating, like the cheek is supposed to be really good on it. And then I think a few of us tried the eyeball, which was just like a super salty, chalky gumball. And that was a little odd.
Yeah. Well, when I was in West Africa for Peace Corps, like whole fish, that was a pretty regular thing. Because lots of fishmongers would come and like into my village where I was living to sell fish, and my host family, they did pretty well, like considering, even though it was a pretty impoverished village for the most part, because my host father, he was a tradesman, he was a tailor, so he did pretty well since he had that skill set, and so lots of whole fish. But I think for me, would definitely be the smaller variety of creature. I was a school scout coordinator. Like we tried to have our own scout program, and we did like a scout campfire weekend with me, another teacher, and then some of the students. And one of my scouts, he came up to us on the next morning, the last day of the campfire, and he has this big rat that he's just dangling it by its tail, and then he just brings it to me. He's all excited, and I'm like, what are you bringing that to me for? Get rid of it and everything like that. And then the other teacher that I was working with, he's like, oh no, it's okay, these rats, they're edible here. And then because then my scout's all excited. He's like, oh no, we'll eat it, sir, we'll eat it. And I'm like, okay, well, just bring me a piece when you guys are, when it's ready. Yeah, right. I guess. So, and then I'm watching them, and they're, it's like they'll put it over like some hot coals first to like singe off all the hair, and then scrape it off with a knife, and then they'll fully cook it. They bring me the front leg, and oddly enough, it tasted just like chicken. Just don't bite in the skin, because the skin is very much rat flavored, as much as I guess I could describe what rat would taste like, so so just don't bite in the skin, but bite in the meat and you're okay. So that'd probably that'd be one of my top ones. It seems like, like these smaller, rather unique creatures have been, chopping it up for us as pretty weird and crazy.
I've had crickets. I wanted to eat more bugs in Thailand. I went to there with the intention to do it, but I only saw them one night being sold on a street vendor, and I thought I would have additional opportunities to get them, and I never did. But I did want to try them. I'm still curious. I would eat grass, like the grasshoppers. If they're doing it, it can't be that bad.
Yeah, I've had a scorpion on a stick.
You've done that? Yeah, I haven't done that. I was going to. That was one of the things that I would have tried, like scorpion. I think there's tarantula. You can eat tarantula, and then the grasshoppers and crickets are pretty common.
Crispy.
Yeah.
Crispy and crunchy.
South America, like Mexico, you can get like grasshopper tacos and stuff, I believe.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've noticed that there's been a little bit of an uptake in like crickets as like a viable protein source and some things too. I
bought cricket protein bars.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I got some for my trek. Yeah. Well, because I guess apparently like crickets, pound for pound, have more protein in them than like your chicken, your beef and things like that. And then I guess like for sustainability's sake, like it's they involve less land, less water and things like that to cultivate a large yield of crickets to make products like that. And I guess they're just really, really clean sources of protein just as well, too. And then I'm also I got a friend of mine, Dr. Bill Schindler. He's a food archaeologist, and he studies traditional foodways. And he actually says that like human digestive tracts weren't really built to digest very much more than maybe like a few plants and insects, really. And so I think like we kind of tax our digestive systems in this modern day with modern day diet. So I guess so insects are kind of going back to the basics a little bit.
That is interesting. That goes directly with like the centenarians, and how there's those pockets of people who live to be over 100 years old, and when you study their diets, it's high carb, high vegetables, high fruit, low meat.
Yeah. So, and that is like, the weird thing. It's just, there's lots of different researches out there, us going around like insects and stuff like that. But then it's just like, insects, like you guys brought up in some parts of the world, you may find scorpion on a stick or tarantula on a stick, and that's just normal, and then, and I think a lot of people would look at that and just be like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. I mean, why would anyone want to go eat that? But then I think on the flip side, though, if anyone who kind of grew up eating insects saw what the American diet, generally consists of, they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. That's gross. That's disgusting. So
yeah, I think there's a case to be made that the like Big Mac is more disgusting than a cricket on a stick.
I think I would go with the cricket on the stick.
I agree with you.
So, yeah, I can't remember the last time I had McDonald's, and I'm not. Right. And this is not to knock anyone who likes to go to McDonald's. It's like you do you, but it's just I think based on what I've learned, I would probably go give insects maybe a little bit more try as well. So and certainly if I find myself in like Southeast Asia and I'm seeing like insects on a stick or a scorpion on a stick, I'd get some for sure. So all right, so that's talking a little bit about food, and again we'll probably double back to some of these topics as we continue on. But what I want to bring up to you guys next is just nature. I got done doing this big long trek through nature across Michigan. It's definitely kind of one of my favorite places to be whenever I travel. So just let's talk about nature highlights. So what do you guys got? What's been places that really stand out in your mind that you visited so far?
Do you want me to take it?
Yeah.
Elliot? I could go on and on with this one. I love that first step into like a new natural environment, and whether it's like the summit of a mountain or you like break through the canopy of like the forest and see a waterfall for the first time. Two that came to my mind. So Machu Picchu, and I know like, we're going back to Peru again. Machu Picchu is Machu Picchu for a reason. It lived up to every bit of hype to me personally. I think sometimes you things get overhyped, but the way you enter, you go up this trail and you go through the jungle a little bit, And then you come out next to this hut and you get your first glimpse of, now, Machu Picchu is an archaeological site. I know you said nature, but when you take this step out onto this ledge, you have Machu Picchu below you. You have Huayna Picchu behind it, which is this massive peak. And then all around you are mountains. And then directly to the left of Machu Picchu is the river. I forget the name of the river, but like it's, and you have the clouds lingering with you because you're kind of in this bowl of summits. So you have the clouds and the mist sort of lingering, and then as the sun heats up, they rise, and you get to see this valley even better. It was one of the coolest places, even without Machu Picchu there. If that archaeological site did not exist, that still would have been one of the coolest places I've ever been to.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. What?
I feel passionate about.
I can tell, man. You got me sold over here, man.
I mean, nature is like one of the best things about travel. I mean, people are too, but there's just like seeing something that you've never seen before, just having the appreciation. The Costa Rica trip for me, we ended up taking like a 1-day hike out through the foothills of the mountains and then hiked up through a river and then just came to this super secluded waterfall area that had like this deep plunge pool that we could swim in. And then there was the big waterfall and a small waterfall next to it that we were actually able to climb up and then go to the top of the other waterfall. And it was just incredible. Like they had probably seen that waterfall specifically, had probably only seen a few other groups before us. And it was just nice to be there, knowing that we were just kind of out in nature on our own, chilling, not thinking about anything else. But Tanzania also, very similar experience where we ended up hiking up a mountain, did some waterfall hiking and swimming, and then camped at the top of the mountain, and in the morning got to see the sunrise. And that was pretty incredible. You felt like Mufasa and Simba standing at the top of Pride Rock. Yeah,
there's so many different ways to be awestruck by nature. Like it could be by reaching the summit, but I've experienced nature where I'm just sort of tucked away in the woods and there's really nothing cool about it other than being completely covered by it, but you know, whether it's the sounds of the birds and the bugs, and you can hear the wind blowing through the leaves and the way the shadowing is, and you may have like water running near you, and so the sounds. And when you kind of like just sit and you take a minute and you like put on the surround sound, it can be awesome. And you could do that like in the nature walk next to your house, and really get a awesome experience from that.
Do you ever think about how nature sounds, like specifically bugs and birds? They're all mainly just mating calls, so you're just listening to people or bugs and nature trying to have sex.
Yeah, I have. I'll sit
bug
in my
hookup culture.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll sit on my deck and just relax and just count all the different like bird noises. Like, so I try to see how many species of birds and bugs I can figure out just by like closing my eyes and listening. It's one of my, it's a hobby.
All right, there's no way I could take another nature hike again the same way, Elliot.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to be thinking about. It's just like, okay, yeah, that bird's trying to hook up with that bird. That bugs are trying to hook up with that bugs.
Yeah, Bobby, I'm surprised Morocco wasn't on your list too.
I was going to say that one too. So that Josh, if you don't mind, like, and one more would be the Sahara Desert.
Oh yeah,
it's so unique, right? And you're most of the time you're focused on the sand and what you can see, and you know, if you have camels with you, like that, awesome. That's a really awesome experience and really incredible. But then the sun goes down and the stars come out, and you can see like the extension of the Milky Way galaxy and shooting stars clearer than I've ever seen in my entire life. That's up there for me for sure.
Yeah, I was probably going to say the Sahara Desert as well was kind of being up there. Like, you know, it was a few years ago now. Yeah, when I went to Morocco, and I had my younger brother there with me too, so that was pretty special to share that experience with him. But yeah, we did a camel trek for 3 days in the Sahara, and it was quite overwhelming though, just to see this ocean of sand as far as the eye could see with no end in sight. But it's just like I felt so I felt like this is what an adventurer would do. It's just like, you're on like this trusty camel that, is so resilient, so tough in this environment. And then, I got my shesh and my schmog, like just covering my face, to protect me from the sunlight and the sand and the blowing sand. And I just felt so, it was truly an adventure to behold too. But it kind of goes, it's so different than what most people can think of when they think of nature. Bob, you brought up that point about being immersed in the woods, surrounded by trees, hearing flowing water and listening to the sound of birds and insects. There's none of that out there. No. It's just sand. But just I do recall those nights though, where, when I was going through there, we actually had a full moon. And it might as well have just been daytime because there was no light pollution to obscure that full moon from shining down on us. And it was so incredible. And like everyone else that was part of our caravan that we were traveling with, they all had like their high end like night cameras because they were hoping for that. They were hoping to try to capture the full moon completely unobstructed in the desert like that. So it's pretty awesome.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. But, actually we haven't talked very much about like the US yet. And I think the US is kind of unique in regards to nature because, we're such a big country that just about any sort of like environment that one would want, we have it here. Of course, we got like snow-capped mountains in states like Colorado, and we got desert in like the Southwest states like Arizona and New Mexico and, parts of California as well. Crazy high trees in place like Sequoia and the redwoods are there. We got rainforests in the Pacific Northwest, swamps, alligators in Florida, and harsh winters up in states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, even Michigan, where I'm from. So I say we got a little something for everyone when it comes to nature. So let's bring it home for a second here. And just what about here in the US? Are there any like major nature spots here in the US that really jump out to you both?
Quite a few.
I think most national parks live up to the hype. Like there's a reason that they're protected. I haven't really ran into, there's one national park that I did not like. And I can get into that if I want.
Yeah, from Pray Do Tell.
It was Everglades National Park in Florida. I went in the middle of summertime. I was there for work and just happened to be close by, so I figured I'd check it out. Drove in, and it overwhelmed me with insects. So to the point where I would get out to try to see, like I would hit a body of water and I saw manatees and stuff just sort of floating around. And then I was on the hunt for an alligator. I wanted to see an alligator in the wild, or like a python or something. I wanted to see something cool.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I'm driving alone. Most of the national parks I visited, I was by myself just because I was traveling for work. So I went to Everglades. I get to this body of water and I step towards the water, and then suddenly it was like a cartoon where a cloud of insects covered me like they do in those old cartoons where they were just spinning around. I ran as fast as I could back to the car, and they followed me the whole way. I had to like open the car door, get in the car, and just like take a breath. It was insane. I've never experienced insects like that before in my life. So that was a hard park to go through.
Gotcha. Summertime in Florida.
As far as beautiful and being awestruck, it's definitely California for me. The redwoods, the sequoias, and then Yosemite are all three of those are my three favorite national parks. Seeing those trees and how big they were compared to like my car, it blew my mind. I couldn't believe it in person, like just standing next to them.
Gotcha. Okay. What about you, Elliot?
There's a lot. The Grand Canyon is pretty incredible. I took a long trip to Acadia last summer, and Acadia is just gorgeous as well. The islands, the mountain, or I should say, they're not quite Rocky Mountains, but they're still pretty great. And then just the relationship with the Atlantic right there is pretty awesome. And then I did take an Alaska fishing trip twice now, and it's just so incredible being in those archipelagos just south of Juneau. There's so much wildlife, it's so huge and vast. You just feel so minuscule compared to the whole scene.
Gotcha. All right. Now, yeah, and I would also agree with you, Bob, that most national parks that I've been to do live up to the hype. And my personal favorite would probably have to be Isle Royal in Lake Superior in Michigan. And when I had first visited the island, mind you, this was like 10 years ago. It was just it was so like unique, and just the fact knowing that I was like deep on this island as I was hiking through it, like my brother and I, we were hiking around there for like 5 days, and it just getting so immersed in the woods and getting on top of some of these ridges and just being surrounded by Lake Superior. That was just like a really special place for me. And at least at the time, it was considered like the least visited, but the most revisited. Like those who come to the island always try to make it a point to go back to it at some point. But I think it's a little bit different now, where it's not really a well-kept secret anymore. Like a lot of people know about the beauty of the island, and so it's like it's kind of hard to get there now, because it's like there's limited means of accessing that. There's like a couple of boats that can take people to the island, and there's a couple of seaplanes that have very limited seating. But it's like, that would be my place. That's probably my favorite national park, bar none, is Isle Royal. Have either of you been there yet by chance?
No.
Okay, put it on the list, and and thank me later.
Yeah. Well, it's such an interesting geographical thing too, because it's kind of like this glacial scarred rockland, because it's got all of these striations that cut through it. It'd be really like, that is high on my list to go.
Right on.
One thing that I've heard a few times that is pretty incredible to see are the Great Plains. Just vast grasslands. Apparently, they're mind-blowing, and it doesn't seem like they would be, right? Like there's not a whole lot there, but once you're there, apparently, allegedly, they are pretty incredible things to experience.
Yeah, so you're saying it's basically the sand dunes of the Great Plains are like the sand dunes.
Yeah. And I'm thinking more in the, like, I think the Dakotas. I can't remember the park. I don't know if it's near Badlands National Park. But yeah.
I think you're right, Bob. It's like because when I went to South Dakota, I started in the Badlands, which is kind of sort of east on the state, and went through the Badlands, hiked around there for a few days, and then I drove a little bit further west towards the Black Hills. But in between, the Badlands and the Black Hills, it was just all like open plains, and it was just weird that like they both and like all those features end abruptly. Like there's no real like phased out transitionary like space to get from one to the next. It's like the Badlands like seems like they abruptly stop, and then you're in the Great Plains, and then you go a little bit further, you go right into the Black Hills, where there's like pine trees and all kinds of other stuff too. It's like it's just weird. Like there's stark contrast between those different types of environments. It was pretty amazing. Yeah. So, all right. Well, we've been talking about highlights all day. Well, all this episode, not quite all day. But as we kind of know, it's just that travel, it doesn't always go smoothly. Some things just don't go according to plan. We do have our challenges. We have our misadventures. And I always like to bring those forth because, sometimes I feel like when I see like travel experiences being brought forth on social media, it's all highlights, but no one shares like the moments where like, they had like either a rough encounter with a local, or they got in food poisoning, or, didn't get very much sleep because there was too much going on at the hostel they were staying at, whatever. I mean, there's always something that goes wrong during travel. So let's have some fun with that next. What have been some challenges and misadventures that you both have faced while you've been out in the world?
You can start, Elliot.
All right. So the one that comes to mind first and foremost is, so the trip I took to Tanzania was with my university program, and we were there for 6 weeks, and they warn you not to drink any of the water, not to use bottled water for everything. And somehow it slipped my mind, and I thought that rinsing my toothbrush would be fine. And so about 2 or 3 weeks into the trip, I get this really bad stomach bug, and I am eventually in the fetal position in the outdoor restroom, just waiting for this bug to pass. And I stayed out there pretty much all night, and the bathrooms they have are basically showers and toilets in one. and I just, not to get too graphic, but I was using most of my orifices to get rid of fluid. And so I just had the shower running and it was just all draining away. And it probably took maybe 5 days before everything was solid again.
That's almost a full week of your trip.
Yeah.
That you spent. Wow.
Jeez, man.
Yeah. I did not use any running water after that.
Oh, yeah. Lesson learned there, huh? Right?
Yeah.
Yep. Big time.
Yeah, well, it's tough in that situation because, you know, depending on like where you go, you get getting like a stomach bug like that, or like a parasite like Giardia or something like that, which I've contracted like 4 times when I was living in West Africa. It is difficult to pinpoint. It's like, did this come from the water? Did this come from the food not being prepared, like, you know, just well? So it's just, and obviously you try not to dwell on those things too much. It's just the fact of the matter is like, you got to do something to clear this. So it's like, you know, just trying to stay hydrated with, you know, all the fluids you're losing in that regard. So yeah, that happened to me quite a bit. And I also contracted dysentery, like I think my 3rd or 4th week when I landed in West Africa. So, and that was bad.
I thought you were going to say Oregon.
Yeah. And it was, I did have to, I also got like a really, really high fever. Like my temperature spiked up to 104.5, which I think at that point, if it went any higher than that, like my brain would actually start to turn to mush. So fortunately, I was able to get that under control too. Not the easiest thing to do when, you know, it's already like pushing that degrees outside, and, you know, a lot of the buildings in my rural village don't have air conditioning. So, but got under control, and I'm still here, and I'm still speaking what I'd like to think is kind of coherently. So hopefully my brain didn't turn to mush. So what about you, Bob? Anything like this?
So I when I read this question, I kind of went more with the challenges than the misadventures. I don't really have many stories of things going wrong, sicknesses, too much. But the challenges, I think, is something that everybody faces and everybody can relate to. And it's more of like the mundane aspect of travel. So getting to the airport, having to deal with long lines, having to deal with rude people, having to deal with just delays and the constant sort of friction that people let change their mood while they're on their trip. And so that's something that I think you constantly have to face with pretty much every trip, because I think you said it earlier, like things just go wrong. Yeah. And those are some of the biggest challenges, not letting all those little tiny hinderings add up to something substantial and impacting your mood on your time. Can you
please tell the Thailand story?
Thailand story. You got a misadventure from Thailand?
I forgot about that story. All right.
I'll do the short version.
All right, I haven't told this in a while.
Oh, here we go. Right, what do you got?
I'm in Thailand, and I go out for the night with my girlfriend, who I'm now married to. Her and I are going heavy. We were drinking a lot. We were taking a lot of shots. We were doing those bowls, you know, where you get all the mixed alcohol. And we were living like, you know, kings. It's Thailand. We have American dollars. We can buy anything we want. So we're buying a lot of alcohol. We get really hammered. And what we notice are lady boys going down a specific alley. And in our drunk state, we're curious. Where are they going? Like, why are all the lady boys going in that direction? And so we decided to follow them down this alleyway, and it leads to a 7-Eleven, which is no surprise. There's like a million of them, right? So we go into the 7-Eleven, and I don't remember anything after this. I wake up the next morning at about like 8 a.m. in a hotel room with 2 guys from India, and quickly realized that I had no shoes, no money, nothing, and quickly realized like I lost my girlfriend. So then it was like going back and trying to retrace what happened. So I wake up in this hotel. I wake up to this Indian guy pushing me. Bob, time to get up, Bob. We have to leave. And I was like, who the fuck are you?
You know, but he knows who you are.
yeah, you made friends.
Where am I? And they told me that they found me on the street and like just drunk and stumbling, and I fell and I lost my shoes, and they picked me up and brought me back and gave me a place to sleep, which is like one of the nicest things that any human being has ever done for me in my entire life. And honestly, I can't say that I would have done that to another person. Like if I was walking through Thailand and saw a drunk person stumbling and falling, I wouldn't have picked them up and drugged them back and gave them a place to stay. So like that, it's incredible to me. And I don't think most Americans would do that, to be honest. I think that was something from their culture that they sort of did. But anyway, so they tell me that they found me drunk and they helped me back home, back to their place. And so I try to leave, realize I have no money. I have to go back and, hey, do you guys have money now too? Like, thank you for giving me a place to stay. Like, I also need cash. They gave me like a little bit of cash, and I went outside and I tried to get a cab, and it wasn't enough for a cab. So now, and I have no idea where I am. Luckily, I knew the name of the hotel that I was staying in.
Did you have your phone?
No, nothing. And I didn't know where I was. I was in Phuket somewhere. And so eventually this guy on a moped agrees to give me a ride for the amount of money I was offering. And so with no shoes or anything, I get on the back and like hug this guy's waist, and he drives me to the hotel, and I get into the hotel room, and I walk into the hotel room door, and it's empty. My wife's not there. My girlfriend's not there. And I'm like, what happened to her? Like, I this is not my night went. Like, where did she go? And so then I start texting some friends back home, this is what I'm dealing with right now.
How did you get your phone back?
It was in the hotel room.
Okay.
I just left it in there. I didn't have service, right? Like it was only on Wi-Fi, and I didn't really need it. And then as I'm doing that, my wife like burst through the door. I don't know if she knew I was there. I don't remember, because we were like part of a Kentucky group. So this is like a group tour thing. So she comes in through the door and she hugs me, and she's very broken up about it. So she had spent the night looking for me at Thai hospitals and police stations with my picture. Hey, have you seen him? Hey, have you seen him? So that's how her night went, which makes me feel pretty bad about myself. And really bad for her.
She said yes, and
she still married me. That was day 2 of a 9-day Thailand trip. So it was
a challenge.
It was a challenge. It was a challenge. I think that's pretty much the bulk of the story. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of wondering, okay, so where was she when you're literally getting scooped up by like these two Indian gentlemen to take you there?
So we went into the 7-Eleven again together, and then we never saw each other again after that. So she was drunk too, but apparently not as drunk as me, but she said she never saw me again. I don't remember, I remember walking in, and that's it. The lights were out after that. So I don't know if I just turned around and walked out. I don't know what would have possessed me to just leave the 7-Eleven without her and then just go about my day. And we had done souvenir shopping in the morning, so I had a bunch of little stuff that was all gone that I had bought with her. So yeah, so it was a pretty horrible night for her. And so I don't like to tell the story. I looked over my shoulder like she might be behind me, but I try not to tell it too much, because
I mean, she is behind you. She's over your right shoulder.
yeah, that's all right. Right here. So it was really rough on her. So I try not to talk about it too much, but it is a pretty crazy story. And again, I really can't believe how kind these two guys from India were. I tried, when I was there, I asked them for their email address because I wanted to do something. And then when I tried to send them emails later, they never responded, or maybe I didn't write the email down the right way. But I have no idea who they are.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So this isn't something that you and your wife like to say, hey, remember that one time in Thailand?
Maybe a few years. We need a few more years to pass. It's still too soon, I think. She recognizes it as a pretty ridiculous story. And so she kind of knows that, when it gets told, other people find it very amusing, as Elliot
as clear. I am too.
Yes, yeah. So it's gotten told a little bit over the years, but I try to bring it up when she's around. Yeah. It was rough,
and that's why you should listen to the Traveler's Blueprint podcast.
No, not what not to do. Yeah. So
well, you've come a long way, Bob.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the Jaeger. That's what it was. It was the Jaeger.
Okay. All right.
Jaeger bombs.
Jaeger bombs. Gotcha. I don't have very many like crazy stories like this. Well, I don't drink. I haven't, I gave up alcohol like, oh gosh, almost like 13 years ago now. But you brought up the point earlier, Bob, about how sometimes, the main like frustrations again are the things that people don't show. It's like, the long lines at airports, and even right now, a lot of people are facing issues with like canceled flights and like heavy travel and, things like that. I remember when I moved to England to go to grad school, I had like 4 different flights that I had to take. I was going from Detroit to Boston to Reykjavik, and then Reykjavik into Manchester. And my flight in Detroit was experiencing delayed. It was delayed for like 2 hours. And when you have that many flights to get to your destination, if your first one gets screwed up, that just creates that crazy chain reaction where it's going to screw up the rest of them. Okay. And so I make it into Boston Logan. I have 30 minutes to get from the domestic terminal to the international one. So that way I could catch my flight to Reykjavik. And now, when I was trying to get off the plane at Boston, there was this older woman in front of me, and she's on her tiptoes trying to get her bag from the overhead bin. And so I'm like, oh, hey, ma'am, let me help you with that. And I was really just trying to move things along, of course, because I needed to catch my connection. And her bag was so heavy, and I practically just like dropped it on the floor. And of course, I felt kind of bad about that. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry about that. Let me get that for you. And when I bent over to pick it up, I kid you not, fellas, the back of my shirt ripped right down the middle. Like it just tore like right down the middle. I was wearing like kind of like a button up collared shirt that might have been like a size too small. It was gifted to me when I was in Peace Corps. So it ripped right down the middle. And of course, I have 30 minutes to catch my connection. So I'm running through the airport. I got this ripped shirt that I'm wearing, and I've never been to this airport before, so I'm trying to find my way. And I make it to security, going through security with a ripped shirt. I'm hoping no one noticed. And then I'm trying to make it to my gate to connect to get my flight to Reykjavik, and they're actually calling my name like over the intercom, telling me to report to my gate. Otherwise the plane's about to leave without me. And so here I am just like running like crazy. I make it to the gate, like just as they're about to close the door, and show them my boarding pass, and they still let me on the plane. I stumble on the plane. Everyone is already seated down, luggage stowed, everyone's ready for takeoff, the whole shebang. And here I am, this stumbling idiot that's keeping the plane delayed, showing up there. I still got my ripped shirt on, mind you, too. I had no time to change. And I just remember like looking down the highway. I'm like, oh crap, but somehow like by, I don't know, fate, the grace of God, however someone wants to interpret this, my seat was in the front row of coach. And so I didn't have to walk the gauntlet of angry passengers who didn't like the fact that I was holding up this flight. So I sat down, and of course, it was like a leather seat kind of right there. And I could feel it like on the exposed part of my back where my shirt ripped and everything like that. It's all sticky, and I'm all sweating too. And so then we finally get to Reykjavik, and it's late at night. Everything's closed, but there was like one shop where I was able to just get like a $10 souvenir t-shirt to change into. So this is why I always like, suggest to people, give yourself a little bit of time during like layovers too, where it's like just as a buffer in case something like this ever happens again. Yeah. And especially with airports you're not familiar with, because you kind of got to get your bearings when you first get there. Or if you got to go from domestic to international, it may take a bit. So give yourself a little bit of buffer room is the moral of that story.
And wear polyester.
And look up the airport map online or use the app to go. And then you can actually see where you're going to land and what terminal you then have to go through.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed.
Person, it makes it super. I know some people like they don't like, they struggle with maps, but if you can follow a map, it's very helpful.
Yeah, and then also if you can utilize the same airline from where you start to where you finish, they do pretty good at sending you like text updates, like especially if like, let's say you have gate changes or whatever, they say, your connecting flight's going to be at this gate when you land in, such and such airport. So they're pretty good about that now. So, and of course, this was like mid 2015, where there wasn't really that much capabilities. And I think I even had a hard time finding a good suitable map for Boston Logan at that time too. But I think you're right, though. It's a little bit different now. So hopefully good preventative measure to keeping you from missing your connections. So, all right. Very good, gentlemen. So now, of course, in typical all-around adventure fashion, I always like to ask my guests some of the life lessons that we learned along the way. Because, you know, and I said this to you both when I was a guest on your show, is that he who returns from an adventure is not the same as he who had left. You know, there's we always come back different people and enhanced in many different ways. So for you two, what have been some of your key takeaways and life lessons that you both learned and implement into your own lives from your travels?
I think mine kind of formed since I started traveling at a young age, and knowing that travel kind of prepares you for everything that not everything is going to be perfect and not everything is going to happen on time. So you learn to be patient and enjoy things as they come.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what I was going to say is actually the same, very similar to what Elliot said. I unfortunately did not learn it at a young age, though. So and I'm very much a person who likes things done on time, in a certain order, the way they're supposed to be done, let's say. Travel does not play out like that, and neither does life. So if you travel and you learn to deal with these things, these, things that throw you off, we'll call it reality.
Right.
In a good way, in an easy way, you can then bring that into your life, into your everyday life. So I think that is a good lesson, and yes, I agree. I also learned that people are pretty awesome, and they're actually what make the world sort of beautiful. Everything is derived from people, right? Mm-hmm. Even the environments that you see, the waterfalls that you get to experience, at a minimum, you're normally experiencing them with people. So I think I have a bigger appreciation for people in like the macro sense now that I'm a traveler than before I did.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Kind of just piggybacking off that, I would certainly agree. And I definitely experienced this. Well, not only just with my travels abroad, but also during my recent thru-hike across Michigan, and kind of sort of, I think, like the tone that many would see, especially in like mainstream media and stuff like that, is that, America is kind of experiencing this great divide right now. And we don't need to dive too deep down that rabbit hole. But I just felt like on the ground, it's like, that's not what I experienced, or when I was traveling, it's not what I experienced whatsoever. It's just, I didn't feel like, people were out to get me or anything like that. And it was weird because whenever I asked like someone like for help, like whether it's like a trail angel that was helping, that makes it a point to help hikers along the way, or just like whomever else that I may come across and they learn about what I was doing, I've had people say, hey, well, are you going to be okay for the night? Like, do you want me to, bring you anything from town, like out here to the trail? I'll bring you like some food or something. Or do you need like, a place to maybe shower, clean up before you carry on? Just random strangers that, will ask me what I'm doing out there. And I tell them, they're like, well, how can we help? It's just, and then just, it seemed like, and it was weird because it seemed like it was the strangers and the people that I would meet for the first time that were ready to move mountains to help me. But I had like a couple of people that I've known for years that, lived kind of close to the trail. I couldn't get them to come out and like either see me on the trail or, invite me to come pick me up and to give me a ride to town. But it was this people that I met along the way that were ready to move mountains to help me. It was really weird how that worked. So I would agree with as well that, it's just, it does show you that people are pretty freaking awesome. I mean, we have our bad apples, of course, but I think generally speaking in the grand scheme of things, people are pretty amazing for sure. All right.
And they've all got the potential.
Yes, all got the potential for sure. So, all right. Now, what's next for you fellas in the future? Places you want to travel to, or maybe travels that you already have planned. What's next?
It's a good question.
Well, I think we have a Oaxaca trip that we're tentatively planning.
Yes. So that we actually have, but that's not for a while. That wouldn't be that's not for another year. So Elliot and I have an infant. Elliot has a kid that might be born by the time this podcast comes out, depending on when you plan on airing it.
Yeah. So, congrats, fellas. Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're kind of grounded for a little bit, which gives us the opportunity to plan. I know places that I should sort of divide up the places that I want to go see with, this is what I can do with my family, and then this is what I can do with Elliot.
Yep.
So I think Elliot and I have already sort of listed out several places. We'll end up going to Colombia. We're going to go back to Tanzania. We want to hike Kilimanjaro together. Mm-hmm. We want to see the Petra and the pyramids. We may go to New Zealand. That one might be a wife trip, I think.
Yep.
But
that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's a few places. It's funny because Elliot and I haven't really talked about going to Europe together. We tend to lean on the countries that are a little bit off the beaten path. So not Europe, not Western Europe anyway.
Sure.
The mentality there is kind of the countries that we feel like we can do when we're older, we'll do when we're older.
Which is most
I see
of
what
like
you,
Western
yeah.
Europe.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's how I feel. Yeah. The ones that we can do, like you can't hike Iceland when you're 60. I mean, maybe you can. Maybe you can.
I intend to. I hope to be able to.
I hope I can.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to
make
bank
sure I have
on
that
it,
energy level. Yeah.
Right. The one of my favorite little memes is the old couple on the gondola in Venice. Have you ever seen that?
No.
And they're asleep.
And they're passed out, and it says, "This is why you don't wait until retirement to travel."
Yeah.
I like that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So name a country, and it's on our list somewhere.
Yeah. Well, gotcha. I mean, I plan to travel to at least half of the remaining national parks in the next 10 to 15 years.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And for me, it's, I got the bucket list item to go to all 50 states. I'm at 42 right now. So maybe try to scratch those off. The states that I have remaining are all 6 states that are like east of New York. So, Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts. So yeah, that's where I have to go to, as well as Hawaii and Alaska too, which,
okay.
I'm thinking about saving like those 2 for last, but I'm like thinking in what order would I want to see those 2 in? And it's like, would I want to, save Alaska for last just because it's very epic nature wise and things like that? Or do I want to go slug it out in Alaska and then reward myself by going and relaxing on the beach in Hawaii? So it's like, how would I want to do that? So
if you want an opinion, I don't know.
Go for it.
You're asking for an opinion.
Yeah, what do you got?
To slug it out and like beat your body in Alaska and then reward it with, a nice relaxing time on Maui or something sounds pretty awesome.
It does actually. Now that we're talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I think it would be hard to go from chilling on the beach in Maui somewhere and then trying to bring myself to, get out in the wild in Alaska. So
fattening up in Hawaii only to have to.
Yeah. Okay. And then besides from that, it's like, I'm still trying to get to all 7 continents. I've been to 4. So, and South America is one of them. So who knows, maybe I'll, take a deeper dive into Peru and, see what that country has to offer. And so you guys have already given me some intel on it. So there we go. Right on. Yeah. All right. And so now as we before we get to wrapping up this conversation, like I said, is that you both are the hosts and founders of the Traveler's Blueprint. And so just for our audience, who maybe haven't tuned into to your show yet, just give us a quick synopsis about what it's about and, what can, listeners expect.
Yeah. So the way our podcast is structured, the first episode of every month is a recap of last month's news articles related to travel, whether it's the airport or environmental. It could be anything interesting. It could be an archaeological discovery. We'll sort of break it down in about a half an hour. Then there's 2 additional podcasts that get released each month with guests, and they also vary wildly. We can talk to an adventurer who hiked Mount Everest. We can talk to someone who's very knowledgeable about the best travel books, or it could be specific to a certain geographic location. Maybe we'll talk to a tour guide in a country. Again, it just varies by what we're interested in that point in time when we book the guest, but they always fall into the travel world. We do sort of lean on the adventure a little bit. We like those stories. They're always, inspiring and you learn a lot. So, but there's no specific real topic for those guest episodes other than travel.
Right.
Ultimately, we hope that it inspires people to start traveling and then ultimately give them a rough outline or blueprint so that they can do it themselves.
Right. And you know, that's a really good point, because again, it's like, you know, traveling, the world is so vast. There's so many different ways you can see things, and so many different ways you can go about seeing things. I mean, you know, some people will walk very far. Some people may just want to sail there, or some people, you know, just may want to go and just, you know, try every single bit of food they can, or all the above and then some. So yeah, I like that approach to it, because it's just like, you know, I think niching and travel can be kind of tricky. I mean, I know some people do it, but it's just like, there's a whole world out there. I guess why, you know, narrowing your focus is kind of how I see it myself. So,
yeah.
All right. And where can everyone go and find it?
We're on every podcast feed, I believe. Then we are on Instagram. We have the Traveler's Blueprint on Instagram, and that's pretty much it. We're not really good at keeping up on social media, but if you follow us on, you know, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, that's where we release the shows. And then what we do is, like, when the episode airs, we'll post a picture to Instagram, just sort of indicating that new episode came out. And that's pretty much it. I would say Instagram, Facebook, or just your preferred podcast platform.
Okay. And I'll get a few of those linked up in the show notes for our guests to find as well. So right on.
And FYI, Josh's episode was 172.
172. There we go. Yeah. Keep that in mind, everyone, when you go and subscribe. 172. Yeah. Yours truly. All right. Now, as we get into the wrap up, another thing I like to ask my guests to do is issue a challenge to our listeners, because, you know, we've shared some great stories today. We've given out some great information today, but, you know, stories and information can really only take, you know, our listeners so far. Action has to follow up when, you know, they're done listening to this episode. So with that in mind, what challenge would you both issue to our listeners today for them to go out there and start living a more adventurous life?
I'm going to pick one that is absolutely doable and achievable today. It is simply try a food you didn't like as a kid that you haven't had in a while.
That's a first for the show. I like that, though. So, all right. So what about you, Bob?
I would challenge the person to start their research. And that's sort of like a boring word, but research can be something as simple as, if you use Instagram, just hashtag Peru and follow that page that gives you insight on Peru. And that could in and of itself spark, you know, get the ball rolling, where you create the outline, where you start to read more, and you suddenly create this itinerary of the things that you want to do or the things that you found interesting in Peru. And then before you know it, you're going there and you're fulfilling the stuff that you wrote down.
Okay. And yet as another first as well for the podcast, you know, kind of hashtag following to get inspiration and ideas. So I like that too. Right on, fellas. All right. So what I have next for you both is my final three. These are three fun questions. At least I like to think that they're fun questions that I ask all my guests at the end of the show. And so you both are going to get asked these as well. And we're going to do this kind of sort of rapid fire, just say the first thing that comes to mind. And the first of those three questions is, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far?
I think mine is probably Bonn, Germany.
Bonn, Germany. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Mine, I think, is Split, Croatia.
Split, Croatia. Okay. All right. And was that the one that was on the coast somewhere? Like when you were talking about Croatia earlier?
It is on the coast. Yes.
Is that where your photo behind you is? Or is that Dubrovnik?
I think this may be Dubrovnik.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But Split is a city on the coast, and there's the Diocletian's castle, estate that we stayed inside of. It's now like a city. It's massive. It was just a beautiful city. Loved it.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right. And next question. What is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do?
One that was going to be completed in 2019, but unfortunately due to medical reasons, I was not able to go, was Iceland. Okay. So it is still on the bucket list. Yeah,
I need to get back there myself. I only did like an extended layover in Reykjavik, and you know, and I'm thinking to myself, I need to come back to this country for sure. So yeah, absolutely. All right, what about you, Bob?
For me, it's the pyramids in Cairo. I like they've been romanticized since I was a little kid. You know, I've seen them, and they've always sort of symbolized this faraway place and culture, and I want to see them, you know. I got to go one day.
You and me both. I think like as an archaeologist, that's like what many people think of when they think of archaeology would be like the Great Pyramids or just like the Valley of the Kings or Egypt as a whole, really. Right. So yeah, that's on my list for sure. So awesome. All right. And the last question, and this is a two-parter. What is your favorite animal, and have you seen this animal in the wild?
Mine is a great white shark, and no, not yet.
Mm-hmm. So sounds like South Africa might be in your future. I think they do like cage shark diving there.
And Shark Week just wrapped up.
Oh,
they're having a lot of encounters on Long Island right now, Elliot. If you want to go to the beach for a day.
Yeah. I would like to experience one in a controlled environment.
That's probably preferred with a great white. Yeah.
Yeah, usually.
Powerful creatures those are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, they're just so interesting because they're so like they are this like the face of danger for the ocean, but we don't really know that much about them still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's like they've been around for like aeons, of course, though, too. You know, never have had to evolve, never have had to change form. They were just made perfect right from the get-go. So yeah, I'm fascinated by those too. So awesome. What about you, Bob?
The elephant, the African elephant, and no, I have not seen them in the wild yet. Plan on
scary.
It, though. Yeah, they're fascinating to me. The structure, like the family structures and everything, pretty incredible.
Nice
their size. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, fellas, that's it. That's all the questions I have for you both. But before we call it a day here, let's just recap one more time where our listeners can go and connect with you guys. You know, again, so websites, social medias, where they can find the podcast. So yeah, just fill us in on the details one more time.
Yeah, sure. So it's the Traveler's Blueprint on all podcast platforms. Pretty much, if it's iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Where else are we, Elliot? Yeah, so that's
Radio
that's
Public,
the best place.
Any podcast platform that you listen on, we're on it.
Yeah, and then if you want to see what we post, the one picture a week that we post just to indicate we released an episode, that would be on Instagram. Other than that, we don't really have a whole lot of online presence.
Okay. Well, like I said, either way, what you got, I'll get them in the show notes for this episode for the listeners to find. All right.
Much
well, Bob,
appreciated.
Absolutely. Well, Bob and Elliot, I appreciate you both taking the time for joining me on the show today. You know, it's been great to connect with you both and just kind of see the stuff that you all been putting out there. And, I just had a lot of fun today, just, kind of taking a trip down memory lane and, getting my own stories out and hearing some stories from you both. And, I kind of think this is just what all about, it's just, as travelers, I think to some degree, we kind of have an obligation to be storytellers too, to inspire those to also get out the world and, connect with others and have their own amazing memories and experiences. So yeah, just appreciate you both being here and what you do. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
All right.